The story goes back a long way, back to 2000, 2001. And I was living in the States at the time in Dallas, Texas. And I just moved there and I was looking for a place to live. And out of nowhere, this man walks into my office and he just says, "Hey, I'm Alif and I've got an apartment and you can rent from me." And he was from Bangladesh, by the way. And at the time, I didn't know anything about Islam and didn't understand the concept of how if you're a Muslim, you should help people who are wayfarers. I had no concept of this. And I said no. He seemed a bit strange at the time. But he kept on coming back. He just day after day after day. I just couldn't understand the persistence of this person. Like, what does he care about me for? So eventually I said, okay, sure, I'll go and take a look, and saw it. It was a nice apartment, so I rented from him. And a few days later, we would start to chat about life, and eventually it turned to religion. And he asked me a very key question. He asked me, is it possible that you've been misguided about religion? And I thought for a moment. I said, well, yeah, of course, it's possible. And I think something changed in my life at that point. At that time, I had no clue, but I think my life took a new direction as soon as I was able to make that answer. Of course, at the time, I wanted nothing to do with religion or Islam. I was a complete atheist, unbeliever. And 3 years after that, I'd already been married and divorced, and it was a really bad time for me. And so I started to reevaluate my entire life. I questioned everything. And I withdrew into a little shell within myself, and I started to read again. I wasn't much of a reader. And then I went back to a book that I had read years prior called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. So I read that again, hoping to find some answers. Nothing really happened for me until I got to the back of the book, and there was a list at the back called Wisdom Literature. And I just started to methodically read over the books in that list, including some religious books like the Bhagavad Gita, which I read. I thought, okay, that's pretty good. And then eventually I got to the Quran. I thought, oh, okay. It's translated by Muhammad Marmaduke Pickthall, a very specific translation. And so I thought, well, where do I get the book? So I ended up going to a used bookstore back in Winnipeg at the time. And I went to the religious section. And sure enough, there was one old dog-eared copy of this particular translation of the Quran. So of course I bought it. It was $3.50. Still remember the price. Took it home and I read it. And I got through it, page after page, cover to cover. And by the end, I was just like, this is it. Something went clunk within me, and just something was completed at that point. And I just simply knew somehow this is it. And because I knew this is it, and because I understood it a little bit, I realized just how far I was away from the straight path at that time. And I was overwhelmed with just the enormity of the task. Like, how do I possibly do all this? How could I, this humble person, achieve that level of moral rectitude? And so I was quite upset. So I decided to read it again, and I did, cover to cover. Got to near the end, and I was still depressed, and I realized, I don't know if I can do this, until I read an ayat at the very end. It said, God is always willing to forgive. And that's when I thought, okay, I have a chance. There's a chance for me with this. I can do it. And I also took some pages out of Muhammad's history and realized that he received the Quran over 20 years. So I thought, well, maybe I can give myself 20 years.
If you're a business owner, then animated explainer videos,
much as I can at the time from the Quran. And I started out doing what I could do that was easy for me. And with really basic things like cutting out pork and alcohol, that for me was so easy. The same day I read the Quran, that was it. No more alcohol, no more pork for me. The much more difficult things that came quite a long time later were giving in regular charity and regular Ramadan fasting, and also the regular prayers, the salat. Those last three things were the hardest ones to implement. And I'm telling you right now, if it wasn't for my wife, I would probably still not be doing those things.
My beloved brothers and sisters, here you have seen this man from USA. He accepted Islam after just...
Islam as a way of life. He decided to embrace Islam after a long search. Since then, he has taken the new name Hassan Abdul Hakim. However, on various occasions he often uses the name Hassan Blagaj Eaton. He was born in Switzerland in 1921, when the peace treaty to end the First World War was signed. Even though he was born in Switzerland, he is not Swiss. Both of his parents are British. Eaton's father was a British soldier sent to Switzerland. They are Christians. Nevertheless, Eaton grew up and was raised as an agnostic by his parents. He received his education at Charterhouse and King's College, Cambridge. There, he worked for several years as a teacher and journalist in Jamaica and Egypt, before finally deciding to join the British diplomatic service. He has also been a consultant to the British Cultural Centre in London. In his home country, Eaton is widely known for his beautiful, poetic, and fine written works. His books include Islam and the Destiny of Men, King of the Castle, and Remembering God. The books by Charles Blagaj Eaton have changed the lives of several people. In fact, his book also holds the highest record in the fields of science and literature. The Sunday Times newspaper in an article wrote that the writings of this former British diplomat inspired many non-Muslim British people to convert to Islam. Eaton received letters from many people who did not agree with increasingly contemporary Christianity and were looking for another religion that was less compromised by modern life. Eaton's introduction to Islam just happened, without him realizing it. At that time, he was still a teenager. He learned about Islam from a young woman whose mother employed him as a nanny. This nanny, explained Eaton as reported by the Islam Religion website, has the ambition to become a missionary in Saudi Arabia. He often said that he had to save lost souls, namely people he called infidels, explained Eaton, explaining his maid's attitude. One day, Eaton said, his nanny took him for a walk until they passed Wandsworth Prison. At that time, his family lived in the Wandsworth area, South London. Along the way, the nanny told Eaton various scary things about the existence of a red-haired person in the sky, who was ready to shoot him at any time if he was naughty. He then told the story about the trip to his mother after arriving home. I don't remember what she said to cheer me up, but the girl was immediately dismissed. However, this is the first time I heard about the existence of God, he explained. This incident prompted his parents to send Eaton to boarding school, Charterhouse. At this new school, he received a lot of teaching about Christian teachings and their holy books. This is where he began to come into intense contact with religious dogmas. In the end, Eaton began to feel interested in philosophy. After completing his education at Charterhouse, he enrolled at King's College, Cambridge. While studying at King's College, he became acquainted with the English novelist Leo H. Myers. Myers' works are heavily influenced by the Hindu Vedanta teachings. However, the Second World War, World War II, which broke out in 1939, forced him to leave school and join the military service program. He was then sent to the Royal Military Academy at Sandhurst. He took this military education for 5 months. After leaving the military, Eaton began writing. He wrote many things at that time, including regarding the teachings of Vedanta, Taoism, and Zen Buddhism. These early works were heavily influenced by the thoughts of Western writers, including Leo Myers. He then published these writings as an essay with the title The Richest Vein. When The Richest Vein was launched, Eaton had left England for Jamaica. One of his school friends offered Eaton a job as a writer in Jamaica. However, he only worked for 2.5 years. Due to family reasons, he decided to return to England. When he returned to England, Eaton received 2 letters from his fans, who he later found out had also read a lot of the works of Ringanan, an Islamic Sufism writer. Because he was interested in the contents of the letter, he decided to meet them. They said that I could find what I had been looking for all this time, not in India or China, but in the Sufi dimension of Islam. He explained regarding his fans' expression. So from then on, Eaton began reading about Islam with increasing interest in Islamic Sufism. This change that happened to him received a strong reaction from a close friend who worked in the Middle East. The friend expressed his disagreement with Eaton's desire to study Islam. His friend talked a lot about Islamic teachings which are irrational, closely linked to violence, and a number of other evils that are widely attributed to the Western world. At the same time, changes also occurred in Eaton's economic life. Upon returning to England, he had no job and lived in poverty. He submits an application letter every time he reads a job advertisement. One of them was an application letter addressed to Cairo University for the position of assistant lecturer in the English literature department. This is the stupidest thing I have ever done, he thought to himself. How could I, who graduated from Cambridge majoring in history and was completely blind to literature before the 19th century, be accepted? Because no matter what, they will definitely hire someone who has quality, he said. Finally, in October 1950, when he was 29, Eaton left for Cairo. Among his colleagues at Cairo University was a British Muslim, Martin Lings, who had long lived in Egypt. Lings is a friend of Reen Gaman, who is also a friend of two fans of his work. A friendship then developed between Eaton and Lings. Outside of work time, Eaton often visits Lings' house outside the city of Cairo. From the interactions he often has with Lings, he learns a lot about Islamic teachings. His interest in Islam became increasingly passionate every time he delivered a lecture in front of his students. Nevertheless, doubts still plagued him. In fact, at that time, I started to really enjoy my life in Cairo. But a question that demanded a firm answer was waiting in front of me at the same time, he said. After thinking carefully, Eaton finally came to meet his co-worker, Martin Lings. In front of his colleague, he poured out all his worries and asked Lings to guide him in reciting the creed, as a sign that he accepted Islam as his new religion. Even though he was hesitant at first, he did it, recalls Eaton. A feeling of fear and happiness, Eaton said, spread throughout his body. And for the first time in his life, he continued, he offered a prayer to the Creator. So he officially became a Muslim during the month of Ramadan 1951. The next day, explained Eaton, he decided.
Famous cities such as Riyadh, Aba, and Jeddah. Mark is a famous millionaire and also a lawyer trained in Los Angeles, specializing in civil law cases. A tour guide who accompanied Mark in Saudi, Dawah Ben Nasher, said that since Mark set foot in Saudi Arabia for the first time, he had started asking questions about Islam and prayer. As soon as he arrived in Saudi, Mark became very interested in Islam. Mark Schaefer and tour guide visit Aba and Alula. There, Mark's interest in Islam became clearer, especially when they went into the desert. Mark was very amazed when he saw 3 young Saudi men in our group praying in a very wide expanse of desert, a fantastic panorama, said Nasher, reported in the Saudi Gazette. After 2 days in Alula, Mark and Nasher went to Al-Juf. Once in Al-Juf, Mark asked if Nasher could give him some books about Islam. Nasher then gave him several books about Islam. The next morning, he asked Nasher to teach him how to perform the prayer. Nasher then taught him how to worship and perform ablution. Later, Mark joined Nasher and prayed beside him. After praying, Mark told me that he felt peace in his soul, continued Nasher. On Thursday afternoon, they left Alula for Jeddah. On Friday morning, they visited the old city of Jeddah. Before Friday prayer time approached, they returned to the hotel and Nasher said goodbye to go to Friday prayers. Mark told his friend that he wanted to join him for Friday prayers, so he can see for himself how Friday prayers are performed. Nasher then welcomed the idea. Nasher said they then went to a mosque not far from the hotel where they were staying in Jeddah. Because they were quite late, he and many other people had to pray outside the mosque, because the congregation was overflowing. I could see Mark observing the people in the congregation, especially after Friday prayers were finished, when everyone was shaking hands and hugging each other with their faces radiant and happy. Mark was very impressed by what he saw. When returning to the hotel, Mark suddenly told Nasher that he wanted to become a Muslim. Because of that, Nasher asked him to take a shower first. After Mark showered, he guided him to recite the Shahada as a requirement to become a Muslim. And then Mark prayed 2 rak'ahs. Furthermore, Mark expressed his desire to visit the Grand Mosque in Mecca and pray there before leaving Saudi Arabia. To fulfill their wish, they then went to the Dawah Center in Jeddah to get official proof of their conversion to Islam. So, Mark will be allowed to enter the city of Mecca and the Grand Mosque. Mark was then given a temporary certificate of conversion, and he was able to visit the holy city of Mecca. After Mark declared his Islamic faith, he had the opportunity to reveal his experiences to Al Riyadh newspaper. He said that he could not express his feelings at that time. However, he felt like he was being reborn and starting a new life. I am very happy. The happiness I feel cannot be expressed in words, especially when I visited the Grand Mosque and the noble Kaaba, said Mark. Mark also told about his next steps after he converted to Islam. He explained that he wanted to learn more about Islam, learn more about the religion of Allah, Islam, and return to Saudi Arabia to perform the Hajj. He also revealed what prompted him to convert to Islam. I already had information about Islam, but it was very limited. When I read the correct information about Islam, I became convinced that Islam is a religion of haqq, truth, continued Mark. On Sunday morning, Mark left Jeddah's King Abdul Aziz Airport for America. When filling out the immigration form before leaving Jeddah, Mark wrote Islam as his religion.
Someone asked the question before that what is the process of a person converting to Islam? This wonderful family over here, they came here invited by their good colleague, right? Darius. And they were asking, you know what, we feel this is the right faith. We have, looked into it. And now, on your own choice, they want to convert. Yes?
Yes.
Allahu Akbar. Yes?
Yes.
All right, somebody's excited there. So for a person to formally become a Muslim, they don't have to be born into a Muslim family. As I mentioned, anyone can convert of their own choice. There is no force, there is no compulsion, as you may have seen. When I approached them, she was asking me certain questions, then of their own choice, they said, this is the right faith. So for them to formally enter Islam, you can come this way a little bit. They have to recite the testimony of faith. We have one more mic, maybe? Yeah, maybe you can give that mic.
Camera too.
So you have Tyree and Rico and Mimi, okay. And what is your name? Tiana. Okay, wonderful. So, to convert to Islam, reciting the testimony of faith, and the testimony of faith in Arabic it goes like this: Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. What we will do is, first we will recite this in English so you would understand, and I will say it and you guys repeat after me, the English part. And then the Arabic part also, for the sake of formality, you will repeat after me. And I will say it nicely and slowly. Okay, Tyree? Good? All right. All right, so please repeat after me. You can hold the mic a bit closer. I bear witness.
I bear witness
That there is no other God.
that there is no other God
Besides one God, Allah.
besides one God, Allah.
And I bear witness.
And I bear witness
That Muhammad, peace be upon him,
that Muhammad, please be upon him,
is the messenger of Allah.
is the messenger of Allah.
Congratulations. Allahu Akbar, right? Yeah, you can clap for them. Wonderful. Yes. For the sake of formality, we'll do the same thing in Arabic, so please repeat after me. Yes, are you ready? No, but try, right? Arabic. Ashhadu
Ashhadu
an la
an la
ilaha
ilaha
illallah
illallah
wa ashhadu
wa ashhadu
anna
Anna
Muhammadur Rasulullah.
Rasulullah.
Congratulations. Welcome to Islam.
الحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله لقد جاءت رسل ربنا بالحق